At a pivotal moment in Isaac's life, he actually took the time to redig his father's wells. And ultimately, what he was doing was reestablishing the principles. He was reestablishing the reliance and the confidence in God's promises. And it wasn't always easy. But the end result was it took his life to a whole new level. It released greater blessings. And in fact, the blessings were so great that even those who had previously contended with him came not just to ask to make peace, but that he would effectively promise to always be their friend. Now, this isn't just a nice story. There's something profoundly important for you and I, which we will get to in a moment. But first, let's look at the context. Isaac had recently gone through tumultuous events. And we'll see that while there were times, and one of the things I love is, there were times that what we see, his decisions reflected that he wasn't really relying on God, he was relying on his own strategies. But in spite of that, God protected and blessed him. And that's important to us because the reality is we will blow it from time to time. But in the big things, he demonstrated this reliance on God, this confidence and obedience. So there's a famine, there's a drought. Now, common sense at this point would say, go to Egypt where things are better. But God actually instructs him to stay there. And so he does. Rather than going with what common sense would suggest, he stayed there. And ultimately, we get the part of the story where in the famine, in that place, he sowed on the land and he got a 100-fold increase. In other words, in spite, counterintuitively to circumstances, he put forth his best effort and God provided this massive blessing. In fact, what it says with that is he not just prospered, but he continued prospering and he became very prosperous. But then it also says, and the Philistines envied him. And it's an important reminder for you and I that as you grow in God's favor, God's blessings, as you see God move on your behalf, as much as you would love to see people rejoicing with you, what you'll find is most of them really are not happy. Those who truly care about you will be happy for you. But even a few of them may be a little bit envious, that it won't necessarily translate in people going, good for you. And that's part of growing in maturity as a hero of the faith, as a leader. So what happens is out of that, Abimelech, who ruled the land there, nicely but firmly suggested, I think it's time for you to move along, which Isaac does. And they go, and now then again, he begins to redig the wells. And even in that, he faces contention, that he had to strive against those who didn't want him to succeed. But he had to persist. And an important part here is this is where we naively are going, well, God, he's doing the right thing. Why aren't you interjecting? But God more and more desires for us to grow in that maturity and strength. Now, as he continues in his faithful persistence, he succeeds. And then God appears to him and reaffirms the promises that God has for his family. So we see this success, but it gets even better. So now that he's succeeded in redigging the wells, God has reaffirmed the promises. And now then what happens? Abimelech comes to him, and Isaac's a little put off, like, you weren't too nice to me last time. And Abimelech's response is, we have seen that God is with you. It is obvious that God is with you and blesses you in all that you do. Make a peace treaty with us. And so what happens? The end result of all of that effort is, again, this profound new blessing, peace. In fact, what we see is it really was reestablishing that spiritual principle of God's promises and his principles. Now, what does that have to do with you and I? Well, here is the reality, and both at an individual level, this is such a necessity and it's so often overlooked. And as at an individual level, and even more so at a leadership level, that there are times when we need to go back and reaffirm, re-examine, and reestablish periodically the principles, the things that we know God has told us, the promises, the things He's told us to commit to move into, whatever it may be. And especially when we've gone through significant events, whether they're really good or they're really challenging, those especially are the moments that when we come out of it, to take that time and reflect, re-examine, and it's for all of us. We have to re-examine what maybe we have slacked on, what maybe needs more attention because of we were distracted by what we went through. Again, even if it's something amazing. And the importance of reestablishing those principles so that they can power our future success. So again, whether it's something significant, good, or challenging, but it's also a good idea just to do periodically. That even now is a great time to reflect back on the things you know God has shown you, God has said to you, and are we giving them the proper emphasis? That when Isaac redug those wells, that is so much more important than the story may seem at a glance. And it's a recognition that we both honor our spiritual parents as well as natural parents, and we reestablish the things they've put into our life. We reestablish the foundations they've given us. We reestablish the foundations God has shown us. And we reestablish the vision that God's given us for the future. That just like Isaac took the time to redig the wells, and he had to battle through resistance to get that success, it's a great time to re-examine, to reestablish, and to create that whole new, stronger foundation that will propel your future success. And watch it take you to a new level of blessing, and for some, that will even bring peace with those who contend against you because they see it's obvious God is with you.